So, welcome back to the second part of the lecture on magic in early modern Spain. This is Dr. Cruz Peterson. Hopefully by now you have read Disillusionment in Love and Virtue Rewarded by Maria de Zayas. So let's continue on with the lecture. Let's begin. When we left off in the first lecture, Fernando accepted Lucrecia's proposition to live with her, dropping his girlfriend Juana like a hot potato. Juana decides to fight fire with fire and enlists a student in the arts of magic to help her win back her lover. So what did the student of magic give Juana in order to help her win back her lover? Was it a recipe for a magic potion, a voodoo doll, rings with demons, a necklace charm, or a portrait of himself? The novice, who is not trained in magical spells, offers her two magical rings in which several devils resided, reminiscent of the ring Pope Boniface VIII wore. The fascination with magic was prevalent even by those who relied on mathematical sciences. Zayas may have been influenced by historical figures such as the 13th century's Pope Boniface VIII, who, according to Mario Pavia in his book Drama of the Siglo de Oro, a study of magic, witchcraft, and other occult beliefs, wore a ring that housed a demon, similar to the magical rings worn by Zayas' characters. We find religious connections in the Malleus Maleficarum as well, in a footnote, in a couple of footnotes that read, and I quote, "The metal of Saint Benedict has been found to be extremely potent against all evil spells. During a trial for witchcraft in 1647 at Nattenberg near the Abbey of Metten in Bavaria, the sorcerers acknowledged that their attempts against the monks were foiled by the holy metal. The possessed boys of Ilfurt in 1864 through 1869 exhibited the utmost dread of Saint Benedict's metal." So 2 weeks later, the student returns to collect the rings from Juana, who, although she has been warned to guard the rings with her life, has handed them to her maid for safeguard instead. On his way home, the devils come out of their dwelling and beat the student nearly to death, shrieking, "Fool! Traitor! You gave us to a woman who entrusted us to a maid who wore us down to the river, to the plaza, everywhere she went. She wore us on her hands while she scrubbed floors and lugged water. Do you think her lover will marry her? No! Neither you nor she can make her wish come true." The true charmer, however, Lucrecia, being the grand witch and with many years of experience on matters of love, would neither have trusted a novice nor have been so careless with magic jewels as the student was. Contrary to this naive student, Lucrecia understands and respects the power of magic. Maybe this is the reason why she has evaded the Inquisition thus far, and what will change in the end for committing the worst magical offense of all, falling victim to love. Defeated, Juana breaks her engagement with Fernando and joins a convent. Years later, after gambling away all of Lucrecia's wealth, Fernando is once again lured away by money and enters into an arranged marriage. As his punishment, Lucrecia, now driven by anger and passion, invokes her first magical spell on Fernando, making him terribly ill. However, she revokes the spell since the only person truly suffering was she, because he could not be with her while sick. Instead of making him ill, Lucrecia performs another form of magical or of witchcraft, which Fernando's estranged wife, Clara, discovers. So what does Clara discover? A cock bound in a cage, Fernando tied to the bed, a goat chopped up in a cauldron, Maria de Zayas sitting at her desk. Lucrecia blinds Fernando of all reality apart from her by means of an enchantment enacted by placing blinders on a rooster and locking it up in a coffer. He now has eyes only for Lucrezia. It can be said that Lucrezia's love for Fernando was truly magic. Juan Culiano claims that love, and I quote, is a magician since his mission is identical to that of a magician's mission. It can be said that a lover and a magician do the same thing. They cast their nets to seize their objects, to attract them and drag them towards them. End of quote. Therefore, Lucrezia finds herself in a contradiction between the subject I and the I it produces, a Renaissance personal pronoun born from humiliation, pain, and anguish. She becomes a victim of magic and falling in love with the young man, an erotic magic that controls the mind and soul, and thus the body. Do you see any correlation to Circe and Medea? Would you categorize Circe's attraction to Ulysses or Medea's love for Jason as an erotic magic that seizes control of her heart and reason? Think about it. In the end, Lucrezia's spell is broken. Authorities remove the rooster's blinders and free Fernando from the charm. However, Lucrezia, who was never really free of the spell of love herself, ran to her desk and took out what? A Barbie doll in the likeness of Juana, a wax doll in the likeness of Juana, Kent doll in the likeness of Octavio, or a wax doll in the likeness of Fernando. The wax figure of a man, which we assume is Fernando. She then took a huge pin from the desk and jabbed it through the head so violently that it penetrated down into the body. She rushed to the fireplace and hurled it into the flames. I love that description. The fascination with voodoo dolls dates back to ancient Greek literature and culture, as seen in Homer's Odyssey with the Trojan horse and Euripides' Medea, who possessed a doll in the likeness of Artemis, which contained Medea's magic herbs or drugs. This photo of a doll in its coffin is from an ancient Athenian cemetery that dates back to 400 BC. This distinctive combination of voodoo doll and curse table, and so here's the voodoo doll right here, and here's the curse table, was found in the grave where it was deposited, alongside the remains of the body from which parts had been removed, doubtless for further magical operations. The little lead doll, and the reason why it survived all these centuries is because it was made of lead, is only 6 centimeters tall, and it has its arms folded in what seems to be a bound position. It also has enlarged genitals, which probably means that it was they were considering the person that it was modeled after a barbarian. It was enclosed within an oval coffin made from lead tablets. Holes in the coffin suggest that it had been nailed there once. At one point, there were nails driven through it. The inside of the lid is inscribed with a fairly standard legal binding curse, and one of the names included in here is the name of the person buried. Is also inscribed on the leg of the doll itself, seemingly identifying it with a person in particular. So after throwing the wax doll into the fire, Lucrezia, and I quote, dashed back to the desk, grabbed a knife, and with the greatest cruelty you can imagine, she plunged it into her heart and fell dead beside the desk, end of quote. In stabbing and throwing the wax figure into the fire and then committing suicide, Lucrezia creates an agency of hegemony and survival that denies the Inquisition the pleasure of publicly humiliating her in an auto de fe. In early modern Spain, specifically in the 17th century, it suffered from an economic and political downturn that was complicated by the exodus of men to either the Americas or to war. Even the wealthy suffer from economic discomfort due to wars and epidemics and natural disasters. Consequently, women took on more of an authoritative role in society due to their statuses as widows, aristocrats, or just strong personalities. However, in an effort for autonomous control in Spain, the reigning monarchs consorted with the Catholic Church to rid themselves of any suspicious people that would threaten the governing classes. Jewish and Muslim converts were especially targeted, as well as women, because of their financial stronghold in their communities, although any free-thinking individual was suspect for the Inquisition, concurrent to the Malleus Maleficarum. Therefore, autos de fe were constructed. According to Kevin DeStefano, the auto de fe, which translates to act of faith, was a public spectacle through which the Inquisition announced the sentences of those it condemned. Although ostensibly a religious ritual, the auto de fe strengthened the Inquisition's political authority. Indeed, it became a ritual machine for persecuting the Inquisition's religious, racial, and political enemies. The auto de fe combined imperial politics with religious fanaticism in public theater that exploited fear to impose the will of the Inquisition on the populace. And even though Lucrecia denied the church and the state the pleasure of persecuting her when alive, her dead body, along with her personal possessions and the rooster, let's not forget the rooster, are burned in the public square. Nonetheless, Lucrecia's magical powers continue to live on. 6 months later, after her suicide, Fernando takes ill and dies. As we go forward, actively read and watch the assigned text and videos. Ask yourself, what are some of the recurring themes, images, and archetypes used to describe the magic experience? How have diverse cultures from different time periods described their universe experience of being a witch or sorcerer? What can the way a culture talks about magic tell us about the culture, about ourselves?